Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm your co-host, Kevin, K-Daddy from the Dirty South, the ATL, Hotlanta, Georgia. I'm a post-production master, filmmaker, and horror nerd.
Hey guys, this is your co-host Ashley, Gorilla Girl filmmaker, lunar goddess, and cinephile.
And I'm your co-host, John Thomas, ghost hunter, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and nostalgic horror geeks out there? In today's podcast, we will be stepping back in time to discuss classic movie monsters. We also have a very special guest joining us this evening. So grab your popcorn, fasten those seatbelts, and join us on this fantastic cinematic journey back in time.
But first, here's Ashley with a word from our podcast network.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more.
Welcome back, everybody. Like Ashley said right before the break, we have a very, very, very special guest with us today. We have Nasty Neal from the Without Your Head podcast and network. What's up, Neal? How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. It's very cool to be here. Hope you all are very well as well.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I'm doing good.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you here and to have you talking about one of my favorite topics, classic movie monsters, the godfathers of horror.
One of my favorite topics, too. You gave me a few different choices, and as soon as I saw classic monsters, I knew that's the one I was going to pick.
So I got to ask right off the bat, what's all of your favorite classic movie monster?
Well, if I had to narrow it down to one, it's the Frankenstein monster from the original Universal Monster films. But I really like all of those, all of the Universal Monsters. But if I had to pick one, it would be Frankenstein's monster. Which for people who can't see right now on for the video, but my backdrop here has many different Frankensteins.
You actually have many different classic monsters on your shelf. Like, I see Bela Lugosi's Dracula. I see... Who is that? Is that a mummy over there?
It's a mummy. Karloff is a mummy. Wolfman, Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And there's more all around.
So when we said horror geeks, we meant people like Neal. Nasty
Right.
Neal. And like us. You know, birds of a feather. I think my favorite's Dracula. Nosferatu, if we're going even further back, which is only 9 years. I'd go with Nosferatu.
What about you, John?
I don't know. It's hard to pick. I knew Ashley was going to say the whole Dracula thing, though. We already know how much she loves vampires, so I don't know. I'm gonna be weird and say the Mummy. Why not?
I don't think that's weird at all.
No, and I think the Mummy and Dracula are actually very similar. They're both romantic. They're both drawn to their love over centuries.
Yeah, I feel like, and I'll be a little controversial, but I do feel like the Mummy was just someone's way of piggybacking on what they found was like a solid formula. So you have Dracula and they're like, wow, that did really well. This creature that's tormented and found his reincarnated long lost love and wants to reunite with her and convince her of their love. And then that tragedy kind of evolved with that. They see that works for Dracula and they're like, okay, what other monster can we do that with? Oh yeah, Egyptian, archaeology is in right now. Let's fucking go for it. Make it a mummy. Sorry. I know that's a lot of oversimplification, but I'm just saying.
Right.
Very similar story.
What about you, Kevin?
I'm torn between Dracula and Frankenstein. Just Frankenstein is so classic and such a staple for so many other stories, and just Mary Shelley just wrote such a beautiful story. But Dracula, circle back to our earlier episode about vampires, and yeah, pretty much that'll speak for itself.
For my film geek friends, did you know that there were 2 different versions of Dracula made at the same time and released the same year? So they had the English version and then they had the Spanish language version. Same set. They, whenever the daytime crew would go home at night, they'd switch it over and record the Spanish version. And so they they released it the same year, 1931. So that's pretty cool.
And I remember hearing that they even try to cast the cast in the same size so they could just reuse the wardrobe and whatnot from Bela Lugosi to the Spanish Dracula and everybody else too.
pretty innovative to save some money, but still hit many different demographics.
Right.
So I think that's pretty cool.
So what is it about Dracula, Ashley? Not that I want to ask the question.
Hey,
I'm
go
curious.
for it. This is a round table here. It's all friends talking, right? And so you can ask questions. What is it about Dracula? I'm not sure, to be honest, because I don't think it's necessarily 100% the romanticized notion. I mean, yes, that plays into it, of this like long lost love, this reincarnated love, this idea that love never dies. But I think there's something more to it than that, because I also love Nosferatu, and that's not very like reincarnated love romantic, right? I mean, yes, that was based on Bram Stoker's, but Bram Stoker's is also, not as romantic as people think it is, like the book. So I think there's just something about the creature in and of itself, this idea of what the vampire represents and is, that I think is pretty interesting. This immortal that may or may not have a soul, depending what ideology of the vampire you ascribe to, but also what the cost is for that immortality. And for these creatures, whether it be the Mummy or whether it be Dracula or whether it be like the Phantom of the Opera, there's a cost for this kind of being a creature, this cost of you don't get love. And I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling of like not being worthy of love or not being something that is quote unquote beautiful enough to have this like pure love. So I don't know. There's a lot in there.
Well, I think that's why I like the Universal monster movies, and why probably a lot of people do, is I think all the monsters in those movies are sympathetic on, some of them very sympathetic, and at least some of them on some level. They're not just evil for the sake of being evil. Some of them I wouldn't even argue are evil, like Frankenstein's monster or the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Or King Kong.
Yeah, King Kong.
He's not evil. If anything, the humans are evil in that.
Oh, yeah. Same thing with the creature.
Yeah.
They're invading his home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Nosferatu, he's pretty evil, though.
Yeah, you leave him alone. If you looked like that, wouldn't you be a little cranky, too?
I actually prefer the Nosferatu version of the vampire.
Oh, with the big matchstick-looking fangs.
Yeah, I think that still holds up. It's a very creepy image.
Yeah.
I didn't like the remake, the Werner Herzog remake, but the original one, I think, is some of the creepiest images. And, it's old silent film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one that people forget a lot about, that kind of, I feel like it jumped off, like, the horror genre and, like, this idea of the movie monster, though, is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. I think a lot of people forget about that film. Have all of you seen that?
Yeah, that and Nosferatu and they're German expressionists, which really started horror. The classic horror movies.
Yeah, because I think Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is, 1920? And like you said, German expressionism. And so it's like just this idea of this guy who is manipulating this kind of weird looking fellow into being this murderer through like hypnotism. And it's just like that in and of itself is pretty disconcerting, but how realistic that probably could be. I like that these horror movies kind of exploded around the same time frame, because, we see it kick off about 1920. And then it's just like boom, boom, boom each year. There's like a new classic movie monster or a new horror monster that they're addressing like these human issues in. I mean, the Wolfman is like father issues and like father acceptance. And then I actually think he's like the saddest of them all, because he's very aware of his transformation and can do nothing about it. Yeah, it's just like, here's what it is. You're gonna go there whether you like it or not. What about The Invisible Man? How do you guys feel about that?
That's actually my my second favorite of the Universal monster movies. I think it's the most underrated one. I think it's the best villain. He's very fun to like. He's very over the top. He's a great psychopathic villain. He's even killing a bunch of people, but you kind of root for him because he's fun. Great performance. It's cool special effects for the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, and just from a technical aspect, like that was one of the first films to use like what we would now call like the keen aspect for like green screens and mets, and they were so innovative, and it still holds up like even to today.
Oh yeah. And I dressed as the Invisible Man once. That was fun with the wrappings. I didn't make myself invisible.
I was gonna say, how'd you do it?
But isn't it cool how well they wrote that story and executed it? That instead of looking at the screen and thinking like, oh, there's a dude wrapped in this like bandage, it's like, hey, there's an invisible dude going and causing terror. So they made the storyline and the context and like just the world around it, created it in such a strong way that we suspend our belief and we're just like, yep, there's an invisible dude going and murdering. Yup, I believe it.
He does a lot of stuff. He like derails a train, and I'm not really sure why you can do that just because you're invisible, but why not?
Why not? I mean, he is invisible. Why not?
Laughing and agreeing with the invisible man. I would do all kinds of crazy shit if I were invisible myself. So hey, I don't know if I'd kill anybody, but
That has so many possibilities. What about the Phantom? How do you guys feel about the Phantom?
I love the Phantom, and I think that's one of the greatest reveals ever when he takes the half mask off and got the big face to the screen. It looks great. One of my favorite experiences seeing a movie in the theater was we went to see the original one with a live orchestra.
Oh, wow.
And that was a really fun experience. That's how they were originally shown, the old silent ones.
That's amazing.
It really makes it very powerful.
I feel like that's the ultimate, like, MTV catfished. Like, he's haunting and beautiful and presenting himself as, like, her dream. And she's just completely captivated and allured by him, right? And his music and just this beautiful haunting figure. And then they get, it's in person, the big reveal. And it's like, oh, my God! You are not who you portrayed yourself to be. It's like the ultimate catfish. Just being silly. And she was very superficial.
Exactly. All she worried about was when he has this whole kingdom in the sewer. What's not to love? Then there's also the use of color in the movie when he's got the crimson skull. But that's a great movie.
Yeah.
And of course, Lon Chaney. Anything with Lon Chaney, I think, is still holds up as far as makeup goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Didn't his son play the Wolfman?
Yeah, Lon Chaney Jr.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
One thing about like all these classics have in common, I feel like, is the countless remakes over the years and like adaptions and evolutions and whatnot. I feel like, with the exception of Bram Stoker's Dracula, I feel like Phantom of the Opera is one of the few that like really had a solid punch at the evolution of where it was and where it is now.
Through the musical.
Through the musical, yeah. With that was Hans Zimmer, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because there's also a Robert Englund remake, which isn't as well thought of. But I didn't think you meant that one.
There is?
Yeah.
You didn't know that?
After he did Freddy, he did a remake of the Phantom.
I need to find that, like ASAP.
Yeah, it was like it at the time they really like pushed it, but it didn't do very well. Because what's also interesting, I think, about the Universal Monsters is Karloff and Bela Lugosi and Lon Chaney Sr. and Jr. They both play, or all those people play multiple characters. Where a lot of the modern horror people, they might do some smaller movies, nothing against those, but a lot of them are known for one character, as opposed to a lot of the actors back then would have played multiple characters in really big movies. And I don't think we have quite that equivalent anymore, where someone is known for multiple iconic characters.
I think you have a few people that kind of do that now, but not on as large of a scale. Like, they're already playing iconic characters that have been made prior to them. They're just kind of continuing that line on.
All right, I gotta ask, any of you have a favorite Vincent Price movie?
Dr. Phibes for me.
I've never seen any of his movies.
Oh, man. Dr. Phibes
I'm
is
kidding.
fantastic.
That was a joke.
Oh, okay.
My heart was broken for a minute.
I'll let it continue to be broken. I don't think I've seen any, so.
You've never seen? Yes, you have, John.
I don't think I have.
Have you seen the original House on Haunted Hill?
Oh, yeah. Duh.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a Vincent Price movie.
13 Ghosts?
Yeah.
I normally go to a 12-hour horror movie marathon where it's midnight till noon the next day. And one year they actually played the original 13 Ghosts with the lenses.
No.
And, it was a
wow.
very fun experience. Yeah.
That's cool.
And so people don't know, they're sort of like 3D glasses, but you just look through like one or the other, either the red or the green. And so if you the gimmick is, if you're afraid, you look through the one and you actually don't see the ghost. And if you're brave, then you look through the other one and you actually see the ghost in the movie.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes it worse or better, actually. But yeah, I'd rather see than not see.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone puts it to see, but it's a gimmicky thing. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool.
Which in the remake with like Matthew Lillard and Tony Shalhoub, the glasses that they use in the movie was actually a throwback to that gimmick from when
William
OG
Castle
came out.
gimmick,
Yeah.
Which he did a few things like that, like Tingler, and then they would put an electric thing in like a seat or two in the theater, and it would shock you at different points.
That's amazing.
That would be cool.
And there's another one too. I forget which one, but like there'd be like a skeleton that would fly through the theater during the movie. Which they did that once too at a theater I didn't go to, unfortunately, but they actually did it with the ghost or the skeleton and had it fly through the theater, which would have been fun to be at.
They did kind of a throwback in Scream 2 with that. They had Ghostface fly through in the beginning, so that was cool.
We need more innovative horror like they did back then.
Yeah, you need some gimmicks.
Seriously.
More gimmicks. Give us more gimmicks, Hollywood.
Yes.
I think you guys are getting it.
I think he was the first guy to do the barf bags too. Give out barf bags for a movie because you're supposedly gonna be so scared you'll throw up.
Yeah.
I think people need to find a new avenue, a new vein in horror, find a new artery to explore. Because, yes, while I agree classic movies are phenomenal and they're where we started and it's amazing to see the evolution as it grows, like, I don't want to go backwards. I want to see what is forward. Find that new whatever it is to scare the shit out of people and explore, like, human nature and, I don't know, all the what is life conundrums.
I will say, actually, though, the original 13 Ghosts isn't really a great movie, but it's a fun experience too.
I enjoyed the remake.
Yeah, a lot of people really like the remake.
Which was surprising because I never really took Matthew Lillard seriously as like a dramatic actor until I watched that. And then it was just like, all right, I'm paying attention. You have some acting chops.
Yeah, love that guy.
He was at the last convention I was at last year, right before COVID. Just about a year ago. It was a year ago this month.
I miss horror cons.
Never been to one. I need to go eventually.
So I have a question for my awesome horror-loving friends. So we all know that Frankenstein is the doctor, and Frankenstein's monster did not actually have a name.
I think he's the real villain of the movie.
He is, actually.
For the story.
And the townspeople. But why do they call it Bride of Frankenstein when the bride was being created for the monster and not
the Bride of the Monster? I think because most people just associate Frankenstein with the monster.
So they just kind of said, "Oh, screw it."
Right.
I never even thought about that. That's really, that's awesome.
I was just curious.
And you talked about all the remakes. I do think that's one remake when they were going to do. I think that's one you could do because the bride is a great image, but she doesn't really do a lot in the movie. She has very little screen time. So if you did do a new version of that, you could actually do more with the character. So it wouldn't just be like you're just doing the same movie again. So there would be something a little more to explore. So I think that would be a remake, in theory anyway. It depends what you do with it, but I think that would one that could warrant a remake because you could do something different with it to actually make her more of a character.
Yeah.
She had only 5 minutes of screen time?
It's not a lot.
5 or 6? Yeah.
I didn't know this till recently though about the bride. Because everyone when they do like cosplay or if they make artwork, they always do black and white hair, but her hair color in the movie was actually red and white. So if you remake it, do it red and white. Or Ashley if you go as the bride for Halloween.
Oh, is that what I'm going as? I like that he's already deciding my like Halloween costumes.
Right.
Like, so Ashley, by the way, only if you'll be the monster. How about that?
All right. We do this ballet. You were gonna do the Dracula ballet. You can do the bride ballet.
All right, I'll do it. Let's do this.
Aerialist bride.
Aerialist.
Switch it up a little bit.
I could do that in the future.
See?
Bride of Frankenstein routine.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
That'd be pretty
Hear
cool.
what the idea is.
Yes. What did you guys think of I, Frankenstein? I'm curious.
Hated it.
Yeah, I was not a big fan, to be honest.
I can't say I actually saw it. So, no comment?
I actually liked the De Niro one, which not a lot of people like, but I thought it was a good movie.
The De Niro, Kenneth Branagh?
Yep.
Yeah, oh my God, I love that one so much.
You know what? When I went to see it, it was for this like press junket thing, so I was going to do a review on I, Frankenstein, and I realized that whoever did the action sequences for it must have done the sequences for Blade, and just like reuse them, because there was this one scene in I, Frankenstein where he's duking it out that is like fight for fight movement, and cinematically, like the way the set was set up and how they're using their layers, exactly as the fight in Blade 2, I believe, where he's fighting the evolved vampire, like the genetically engineered vampire in the warehouse. And I'm just like, well, that's weird. Like they're like, hey guy, we need you to come, sequence this. Oh yeah, okay, I got something. And then he just kind of procrastinated maybe, and then taking pages from an old notebook, thinking nobody would notice. I don't know. Just mirror it. That's just my opinion, though, so I don't want to get sued. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. Just want to put that disclaimer in there.
I feel like now I need to watch it just for that.
Yes. Well, you have to watch both of them now. You have to watch
Yeah.
Blade
Yeah.
2 and then I, Frankenstein.
At the same time.
Unless you just have Blade 2 memorized, all the fight scenes, which I'm sure everyone does.
I like Blade. I've watched all of them a lot. Not gonna lie. I'm a Blade fan. I like the concept, and I
Blade
like.
movies, too.
Yeah, I'm an action junkie when it comes down to it. So when I have those two worlds married together, I thoroughly enjoy it. Typically, so.
Trying to think of the best action horror or action monster movies. What are some of the ones you like? I guess Blade. Because the original, Universal, they're not just, there's like some fight scenes, but they're not really action movies. When they tried to, redo them, they tried to redo them as action movies. The most recent ones.
And that's what I feel like most horror movies in the early 2000s were, that marriage of horror and action. They were trying to kind of mainstream it towards the action community. And so, like, any of the Blade movies, and also, like, the Underworld, that's just, like, action sequence after action sequence. Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman. Just a lot of action. Take you, please.
Yeah. Or in the Mummy movies.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the Mummy.
I remember when the newest Mummy came out, some people thought it was a remake of the Brendan Fraser Mummy, which was kind of sad.
Oh, the Tom Cruise one?
Yeah.
I wasn't a fan of that one. Tom Cruise, no. I don't know. I didn't like that one.
No, it's not a good movie.
No. I did like Hollow Man with Kevin Bacon and Elizabeth Shue from the 90s.
Okay.
That was good.
So we're talking about classic movie monsters. At what time frame would you say cuts off classic and goes into modern?
70s, 80s.
The creature, the Black Lagoon's usually considered the last Universal monster movie, and that's 54. But I would think I would still consider stuff, of that era classic. But for modern, I would think I'd probably agree with John. Probably the 70s is on, from kind of Leatherface and that era on. I think for me would be modern. It would probably also depend on how old you are.
Yeah.
I'm an old man.
Because they consider The Blob a classic.
Yeah, I would
movie
consider
monster.
Blob a classic.
And he's 1958, so I was just curious where that line delineates, and does it move? Does it shift as we proceed?
Well, I think it would, because if you were alive in the 50s, if you were like a teenager in the 50s, you wouldn't say, hey, the Blob's classic. But you'd probably still think of Frankenstein and Wolfman as classic. Just like I even though I think Leatherface is, even it's before I was born, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I would consider it more modern. But if you were born in the 90s or 2000, you probably consider that classic too. You might even consider the original Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th was classic if you're 20 or something. So I think it would always move.
And that's the sad thing that I noticed when I was looking up some stuff. They actually included Freddy and stuff like that. And I was like,
What?
That's not classic. Yeah, I'm like, no.
I would consider it like a modern classic or modern icon.
Where would you put American Werewolf in London? Because that's the 80s, and to me that's kind of borderline classic.
Yeah, for me it's because I went and saw it at the drive-in, so I remember going to see it. But
It's modern to you.
yeah, but it's a classic movie. But I don't. So interesting. I really do think it depends on how old you'd be. Because if something came out before you were born, I would think, it's fine to call it classic.
Well, I don't know, because I'm an 80s baby, but there's things like The Fly, the Jeff Goldblum version, not the, original, and I wouldn't consider that classic.
Which I really liked the Vincent Price for The Fly. A lot of people don't talk about it too fondly, but I'm a fan. It has a great ending. But go on, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. I think I just consider classic movie monsters those that kind of paved the way for the movie monster. And I don't know. I guess I would go as far forward as the Blob, but probably not much further than that. Like anywhere between the 20s and the 50s, like late 50s, I guess, if we're counting the Blob. But I think anything after that starts to just be, like you guys say, modern classic movie monsters.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it with like Halloween being the 70s. It's like I think of that as a classic, like as a classic film and a classic horror film.
I would
but
consider a classic slasher, since like the slasher genre started around then. I guess you could, some people consider Psycho the first slasher, but I think like the 70s, the Halloween would be one of maybe the first slasher, even though there's not really any slashing.
But it's hard though, because like I think of it as a classic film,
Sure,
like regardless of the genre breakdown, but I wouldn't classify it as classic horror monster like Frankenstein, Dracula, Mummy.
Yeah, even the term monster is interesting because, what does monster have to be something supernatural?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because Michael Myers you can even argue if he's supernatural or not, if he is the boogeyman, and so is he considered a monster? But I guess even some of the classic Universal monsters, the Invisible Man, is he really a monster? He's the guy that turns invisible.
So maybe it's classic horror movie icons.
Yeah, I'm just going with monster, but I could see how you could argue if he's a monster or not.
No, I'm with you because he's not really like something that's been reimagined, brought like from the dead.
Yeah, for me in the original Halloween and the second one, after the second one, he's more supernatural because he gets burned up and then he comes back. But in the first one, to me, he's really a guy.
Yeah.
Which always is what's kind of scary about the movie. He's just an evil guy who could just be your neighbor. He's just a kid who's evil for no reason. He's just born evil.
He's a serial killer. Yeah, I guess if we are looking at anything prior to the 60s, I don't know. There's stuff that I think are classified as classic movie monsters that I don't quite see as being a classic movie monster because I think it's more of a concept than like an icon or a figure or a person. Kind of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers is considered like classic movie monsters, but for me it's like more than one thing. I don't know. It's more of like an invasion versus... All right, not like it is an invasion versus like, an icon telling a story.
Yeah, there's no one singular monster.
Yeah.
It is all, even the Thing, I guess, to some degree.
Yeah.
Even though it's lots of monsters, there's and it is one monster, but it's always changing its appearance. I guess you consider the Pod People a monster.
Yeah, there's quite a few out there that they put into that category that I don't see.
As far as remakes, I actually think that's one of the best remakes. The first remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the one with Jeff Goldblum and Donald Sutherland.
I like Donald Sutherland. I think they did that remake very well.
Yeah, one of the greatest endings when he's screaming and pointing.
Yeah. A little unsettling, but really good.
The Blob also is a good remake, the 80s Blob. The original Blob, it's fun, but it's not really a great movie, I would have to say.
Yeah, I think that's why I have a hard time with Invasion of the Body Snatchers being a classic movie monster or like Pod People or stuff like that, because I think about like modern movies and I wouldn't categorize like Arachnophobia. I wouldn't categorize the spiders as being like a movie monster.
Yeah, I consider that more an animal.
Kevin would consider him a monster.
I would.
I don't know what the distinction is, but for me, like, if it's just a straight-up animal attacking people, that's not a monster.
It's a killer animal. But I guess I do categorize aliens, the alien being a movie monster, and predators, the predator being, but there's more than one of them. So I guess I could see how that designation would be made to an extent.
Well, you can't really, like, you can draw a predator or if you see an alien, but what does a pod person looks like? It looks like the same person. In fact, Ashley might have became a pod person.
I hate my internet.
Maybe her internet can be considered a monster.
It is a monster. Now, what were you saying?
I don't remember. I'm making stuff up. Oh, I don't know. I think you could draw the predator, but you can't like draw or make art of a pod person and someone would know what it was. The only way you could do it is if you did like Donald Sutherland at the end when he screamed and they know that for the movie. But if you just draw a pod person, it'd just be a person.
But I guess you could draw the creatures that attach into their backs.
Or while they're transforming.
Oh gosh, that used to mess with me with like the little spine thing that like attaches into the base of the neck. That just would give me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah. Which you probably should, I would think.
I don't know. Not everybody would be disturbed by that, I suppose.
Some people are into that kind of thing.
Some people are. There is a fetish for that.
Yeah, I have those sites bookmarked.
Puts a whole new phrase on body snatching, right?
You won the bad joke of the day.
Somebody's got to do it.
What's the prize?
Bragging rights.
It's always a good prize, I think.
Hold on, I get a prize? Is that on the table? Sweet. Other than bragging rights. Chocolate. I demand chocolate.
Chocolate it is.
Okay, what about King Kong? I mean, that is technically a classic movie monster, but
I agree.
that's one where I think has deviated so much that now it's just like an action figure.
Well, same with Godzilla.
Well, now he's like 500 feet tall. I love King Kong. It's one of my first favorite movies. I love stop motion. I like everything. The only thing I can never understand about King Kong is when they go there to the island, like, we got to bring back Kong. We can make all this money, and the whole island's filled with dinosaurs, and none of them think, well, maybe we could bring back a living dinosaur. That would probably make money too. But no, they're just like, we got to bring back the giant gorilla.
I, for one, am thankful for that because of Jurassic Park.
But honestly, if anyone out there is ever on an island and you're like, we got to bring something back and we can make a show, make money. If there's dinosaurs there too, I think you can do well with a giant dinosaur.
Grab one or two of those.
Right.
I don't know. I'm really looking forward to the new King Kong movie coming out.
I am too.
So that's exciting. Not gonna lie.
But yeah, King Kong's great, and again, he's not evil. You feel bad for him.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it goes against what I just said about he is really an animal, but at the same time, he's a giant animal, so he kind of is a monster.
I mean, he's menacing enough to destroy buildings, so...
Right. He's killing all the villagers. He's killing everyone in New York.
Striking a little bit of fear into people.
That was the last film I went to see in 2020, right before COVID, was the original King Kong. They played at Fathom Events.
That's pretty cool.
So that was very fun to see in the big screen.
I don't even know the last movie I saw at the movie theater.
I do. Birds of Prey.
I have the, which I actually don't have on my phone anymore, but yeah, I would sometimes go to movies and walk out. But the, it's the app, I forget which app it's for, AMC, I think, StubHub. And you get 3 movies a week, and I would go to this big one in Boston, and I would go see 3 movies that day because you could use it all one day. And a lot of times the third one would be something I'd probably not want to see. And sometimes that would work out. It'd be like, well, I don't really want to see this, but I got a third movie, I'll go see it. And then sometimes it would be like the Harley Quinn movie. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to like this, but I got a third movie. And then I would go in and realize, oh, yeah, this isn't for me. I also saw Cats that way, the live action. Well, I guess
oh my God, you went and saw Cats.
Yeah, I didn't finish that one either.
I watched it on HBO. That was very hard to watch. It was horrible.
That's another one. The trailer, I was like, hard no.
Modern classic horror monster.
There's like people online. That's true. They are monsters. They're very creepy.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you guys say, what movie, I guess, captivated you and brought you into horror? Like, this is what drew you to the horror genre. Was it a specific classic movie monster or like an old school film? What brought you to horror?
The first movie I remember seeing in drive-in was Night of the Living Dead. I was like 5 or 6, little kid. Single mother. My older brother's 9 years older. Well, she'd bring him and his friends to the theater instead of getting a babysitter. Just bring me along. The first movie I remember seeing, I might have even seen movies before that, but so the pickup blows up and the zombies start eating the people, and I started to like get it. I was scared, and my mom said, "Don't worry, they're just having a barbecue," and then I was fine with the rest of the movie. But that one, there's a few of them that I remember growing up watching. So I watched that. But then off TV, I would watch Psycho, and the Universal monster movies, and King Kong whenever they'd be on TV, and I'd record them on VHS tape. But those group of movies would be the ones that made me a horror movie fan.
I love your mom. I'm just gonna.
I've been trying to get her on the show. Hopefully
Don't worry, they're just having a barbecue.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start using that.
It worked. I mean, I turned out fine.
Define fine.
Just like define classic monster.
I don't think our definitions mean the same thing. Just kidding.
No, that's probably accurate.
The for me, the first, I guess, horror, I'm just going to call it a Halloween movie because it's not really horror, but the one that kind of introduced me to that world was Hocus Pocus that I can remember. And from that, like, I grew into watching, like, Halloween Town, and then I watched the remake of House on Haunted Hill and 13 Ghosts and whatnot. And growing up, I loved Scooby-Doo. And so kind of being engrossed with that and seeing, like, the Vincent Price episodes of Scooby-Doo, finding out that Vincent Price was a horror icon and was part of the original House on Haunted Hills and 13 Ghosts, I actively sought out the originals. And then so I started kind of working my way backwards. So that's my kind of introduction to horror, I guess.
I keep forgetting how young Kevin is, and somehow I knew he was going to say Hocus Pocus. That's why I was shaking my head.
That was literally the most Disney introduction to horror that I've ever heard.
And Nightmare on Elm Street. Or, no, not
Yeah,
Elm
you
Street.
can't go hardcore.
He just throws in something.
Nightmare Before Christmas. That's what I meant.
Oh, that makes more sense. Okay.
Yeah.
You're still a baby, though. No,
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't remember seeing it, obviously, in theaters, but my mom told me that she took me to go with them to watch American Werewolf in London. And then we had watched it at home, obviously, when it was released at home. So that and Nightmare on Elm Street, stuff like that. Also going to bring up The Monster Squad. Anybody remember that movie from the 80s?
Yeah.
Love it. So that one got me into it too. So, and I agree with Kevin with the Scooby-Doo stuff, but that's as far as I'm going with agreeing with Kevin on that. No Disney introductions for me.
My introduction into the world of horror was probably Freddy Krueger. Love at first fright, baby. I started with a bang because I did not start with Disney. And then it kind of went into Hellraiser. And yes, I was pretty young watching these movies. I was allowed to watch horror films at a young age. Similar to Neil, I had a single mom who had a Blockbuster card. Remember back when that existed. And I was allowed to pick whatever movies I wanted to watch because my brother and sister didn't care. They weren't going to watch it anyway. So I always picked a horror section. And my mom's rules were, you can pick whatever you want as long as you sleep in your own bed at night. And as long as you skip through any sex scenes. And I was like, deal. And yeah, I watched a lot of films that a kid probably shouldn't watch, but I'm just fine.
Yeah. But yeah, my mom signed a thing at the we didn't have Blockbuster, we had local Zoom Video, but signed a thing that I could rent whatever I wanted, so I could go in, and so they still wouldn't let me rent NC-17 because you're not allowed to do that, but any R-rated movie, it was signed on the thing that I could rent.
Yeah, my mom did that for us too, with a one that was local.
I don't think anyone ever looked at it. They didn't probably care. They just let me rent it anyway. But,
Or whatever.
yeah.
Whatever, it don't matter.
Do what you will.
Exactly.
I had the first VHS tape here my mom ever bought me, and that's Creep Show. And that's another movie that really made me a big horror fan, more of a modern movie, I guess. But yeah, that was back when VHS tapes were, they were expensive, so, you couldn't just buy them all the time. But the VHS tape doesn't work anymore because I watched it so many times, but I kept the clamshell.
When I actually lived in Salt Lake City, they had this pub that was like a pub and a pool hall and a movie theater, like little theaters in there, and they did a special screening of Creep Show, and so I was able to watch that in theater. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, I love Creep Show.
How do you guys feel about the mashups of our classic movie monsters? So like Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, House of Dracula.
When I was a kid, I loved those movies. When I watch them now, they're clearly not as good as the original movies, but they're still fun. Wolfman vs. Frankenstein's like a fun movie. Frankenstein Wolfman. It's not nearly as good as Frankenstein or the Wolfman, but they are still fun movies.
Yeah, what about Abbott and Costello meet
I
Frankenstein?
love the Abbott and Costello movies. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein's great. It's got all the Universal monsters in it. Those are just fun movies. I think they're well made. I don't know if it is. I think it's probably the first time they started to kind of have fun with the monsters, because the old Universal monster movies, like, they're played very straight. They're not, there's not a lot of there's like some comedy, Invisible Man, but they're not played for comedy. They're serious, characters. But by that time, they start to have fun with them with the Abbott and Costello.
Yeah, I feel like that whoever wrote Hotel Transylvania watched that and then decided to just run with it.
I feel like it also exposed a different audience to the monsters that wouldn't have maybe necessarily went and watched them too, and kind of bridged two unlike but very similar worlds together.
I think we're finding horror and comedy go well together, just like action and horror.
Yeah.
It's like the monster cereals.
All right. On that note,
Count Chocula.
what's your go-to?
I like Boo Berry.
I was going to say Boo Berry.
I don't know. Frankenberry's pretty good too. I like Frankenberry.
I like Frankenberry as well. I'm not a huge chocolate cereal guy, so I like the Boo Berry and Frankenberry.
I'm torn. I'm torn between Frankenberry and Boo Berry. So one thing that like has been kind of a common thread through everything that we've been talking about with it is just the impact that horror has on people and also companies. I mean, Universal, they were in serious trouble right before the monster movies, and that's ultimately what saved their studio. So I just love seeing that impact of horror on people.
Yeah, in recent time, it's really gotten big again, horror movies. Or, I think probably with like It and Get Out started, a new phase of R-rated horror movies being popular and something that people can make money with. Yeah, but it seems like there's always been an audience for horror. Because for some reason in my mind, you think like an audience back then wants something like prim and proper, but they were going to see all these crazy horror movies.
I think that the animation, the stop motions that they did for Wolfman's transition was pretty fucking cool. Like to show his
the fades.
transition.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I liked that.
When they were originally going to make the Dracula with Bela Lugosi, they wanted to almost recreate the makeup from the 1922 Nosferatu. Bela Lugosi fought tooth and nail to avoid that kind of makeup, and which is what ended up being the iconic look that we knew.
It's probably a good choice because it would have been a completely different movie.
Yeah.
Well, and his face doesn't support that anyways. Like, you think about Nosferatu's facial structure.
Yeah, it would be weird him walking around like really monstrous.
Yeah.
And interacting with people. Because you if you saw this like total monster, like you wouldn't be like, hey, what's going on?
Well, and they are two separate monsters. Even though like they're based in some way on a similar character, maybe in writing, Nosferatu is a creature. He is not someone that was human that is now this, vampire that drinks blood. He has always been Nosferatu creature. And as far as we know, that's just where he was not once a man. Whereas Bela Lugosi's Dracula, came from human origins.
Right.
He's much more monstrous and, vermin-like.
Which is why I like his teeth placement, because it does make him more of a creature and less animalistic and more like this rodent.
Long fingers and
yeah.
Shout out to Max Schreck.
And Shadow of the Vampire is a really fun movie if you've never seen it.
Malkovich?
Yes.
I love Malkovich. Johnny boy, what you got to say on this topic? You've been quiet.
I know, I haven't really seen a lot of them, so I really...
That's okay. We're talking classic horror. What's classic to you, man? What works? Maybe from the old school that's been carried through to the new school.
Well, I mean, I know we brought up King Kong, but there's also Godzilla. My brother was obsessed with Godzilla forever, so it got to the point where it was annoying. He would watch Godzilla all the time, and I'm like, I can't watch this anymore. Stop.
I think that's Godzilla movies are something that got a lot of young people into monster movies for sure. Because when I grew up, there was an internet and everything, so Saturday mornings usually Saturday mornings for Godzilla movies, they would show them on local channel 38 here, Creature Double Feature. And you'd make sure you were home to watch that, because now you can just go and watch that stuff anywhere. But at that time, you had to actually be at the TV to watch it. So that, or they show them at night sometimes. But yeah, that would be stuff. And plus, they're rated. I think they're rated G or not rated. So there was stuff that kids could watch. Because there's really no sex in any of the Godzilla movies. Some cartoonish violence. So it'd be something that would get people into monsters.
It was a gateway.
Exactly, the gateway drug.
Gateway creature.
Did you have a favorite monster in the Godzilla movies?
Mothra was cool.
I do like Mothra.
Yeah.
I like King Ghidorah.
Yes.
But I am more of a King Kong guy. But.
There you go.
Yeah, I leaned more towards King Kong. Although I'm living for this King Kong versus Godzilla, so.
Yes.
Can't wait for that. I'm super excited for that.
I know it'd be cool. It's going to be, I think it's on HBO Max and everything,
Yes.
but that would be one to see on the big screen if possible. Because when I saw King of Monsters on the big IMAX screen, it really was visually fun to watch.
See, that's a question. Let's go from, say, the 70s up until now. What do you think is going to be considered a classic in, say, 100 years? Like how we consider the Universal?
Pumpkinhead for the nostalgic. I mean, if we're talking about mainstream, super in your face, probably not Pumpkinhead, but for everybody who's like actually into the horror genre a bit more, I would say Pumpkinhead is one of them.
That's one of my favorites.
Mine too.
Maybe Babadook.
Jeepers Creepers.
Well, I know like Nightmare on Elm Street and all those movies, Friday the 13th, Leatherface, that'll be considered classic. But I'm trying to think of like an actual monster. I guess Freddy's kind of a monster.
The Jeepers Creepers monster. Because you can't hear that song without thinking of the movie now. Jeepers Creepers.
Right.
Where'd you get them peepers?
Chucky.
Jigsaw, the puppet. Even though he's not the killer, people associate that with Jigsaw.
Gremlins. I think the Gremlins.
Yeah.
Would you consider Annabelle? Is that because we said Chucky, would Annabelle be something?
Yeah, but I think Annabelle just kind of sits there, doesn't she? Does she get up and walk around or anything?
She did have some movement in the Origins. Not like walking around, but she did.
Okay. But I mean, all those movies, I think those will be considered classic horror movies, though, that whole universe, the Conjuring universe. For Monster, Predator.
Pennywise would be.
Oh, yeah,
eventually.
Pennywise is a good one, yeah. Because that has to be not just something that's cool, or like you said, because I love Pumpkinhead, but I don't know if that'll be remembered by like a mass audience.
He should.
I think it would be considered classic amongst horror movie fans, but something like, even non-horror movie fans know Frankenstein and Wolfman and everything.
Well, he'll hold a special place in my heart.
But Pumpkinhead's definitely one of the coolest actual monsters.
Yes. Like all the practical effects in that to achieve. I mean, you think about it in theory, this is the pumpkin monster. Just sounds silly as fuck, but then you watch the movie and it's like, oh, okay. This is alarming. This would be terrifying. So, and just the concept of it is like the origins and its story is pretty awesome.
That's a really cool witch in that movie too. I think it's one of the better witches in movies.
Yeah, scary witches are hard to execute in movies.
I agree. Is a witch a monster?
Depends on the witch.
Witch Old Witch, the Wicked Witch, Wizard of Oz. I thought the witch in Gretel and Hansel from last year was really cool too.
Yeah, there's some pretty interesting ones out there, but in terms of like what would be a classic movie monster like 30 years from now from like that time frame, I think that you guys said we've got like Freddy. Even though he has human origins, his ability to transform into the different monsters and do really terrifying things, I think definitely categorizes him as a monster. I love me some Freddy.
Well, I think I do think a new Nightmare brings a whole new question into that. Even just for horror fans, I always think that's the most underrated of the sequels because it really makes you ask, why are you drawn to the villains of these movies or the monsters of these movies? And then that was like a manifestation of evil itself that came to life. I don't know. I think it's a really underrated and interesting movie.
I really liked.
It's not perfect by any means, but I think it's a very interesting concept.
That was actually one of my more favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
It's one of my favorite of the sequels.
Yeah, I definitely like that one and Dream Warriors.
You mentioned, Wolfman versus Frankenstein. How about for modern ones? Would you want to see? They've always talked about doing, Ash versus Pinhead and all these different things. Are there any new ones you would like to see do battle?
Freddy and Pinhead.
Freddy and Pinhead?
Mm-hmm. They're both into torture, so. And actually, since Freddy tries to pull on people's fears and use that to torture them, I'd be curious to see what Pinhead's fears are that he plays on.
Oh, that's interesting.
I just want to see another Freddy versus Jason.
I always like the idea of Ash against any of them because Ash is one of the few heroes of any of the franchises that continues. Usually all the franchises are built around the villain, but the Evil Dead movies are actually built around the hero.
And same with Resident Evil. You have Alice. She's pretty iconic.
I remember at one point, it was after Freddy versus Jason that there was a Ash versus Freddy versus Jason that was slated and eventually just got pulled. But
Nope.
That I would absolutely love to see.
Nope.
Just from the
Give
ridiculousness
me
of
another
it.
Freddy versus Jason. I'll be happy.
Leatherface versus Michael Myers.
Michael Myers is gone after that. That's done. He's chainsaw done.
That'd be cool.
But he always gets back up and keeps walking very slowly, so...
Fastest movie ever.
He got his eyes burned out and he came back.
True. But still. Fastest movie ever. Chainsaw done. Okay.
What if someone just captured them all and the movie was about them pitted against each other and like gladiators? They have to, then they're betting on who's going to win.
Wasn't there supposed to be something like that at some
I
point?
have no idea.
I think they actually had like some concept like that.
So I'm now thinking of like the climax of Cabin in the Woods when because obviously it's not actually Freddy, Jason, and all them.
Yeah,
but
they're all in the.
Also, Ashley hasn't seen it, remember? Shush.
What?
I fucking love you, John.
You're welcome.
oh right,
I wasn't gonna say it. I'm just like, don't listen, don't listen, don't listen.
Nope. We avoided that once before. We're avoiding it again. Shut up, Kevin.
I think she did mention that to me, that she's never seen Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, you were supposed to watch it with me.
Let's do it up.
He says that. He's a liar.
Watch party.
yep.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of interesting ones out there that'd be cool to see them like pitted against each other or teaming up with each other against each other, like tag teams, like WWE style, except horror.
Very cool.
Tag teams. Finish him. Mortal Kombat.
Well, in Japan they had a wrestler named Leatherface, and he was just straight up Leatherface.
Oh my gosh.
I think there's a Freddy too. He was kind of lame, but Leatherface had a little bit of a run, and he had a chainsaw, but they had the chain off of it, so he couldn't really. But he would run through the crowd because in Japan they don't sue you, and so he'd run through the crowd with a live chainsaw just without the chain on and scare all the fans.
That's amazing.
This has been an awesome, awesome time.
I've had a good time. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you guys have any final thoughts on this topic?
Tell everyone to go watch Frankenstein.
And soon it's going to be easier than before because Universal is releasing all of the classics on YouTube very soon.
Yeah, that's very cool.
I'm excited to rewatch them.
Because there's always going to be new audiences that have not seen this. Or if you've seen them and want to relive them, why not? Go up there and watch them.
What about you, John? Any last thought?
Chucky versus Annabelle. Just saying.
Playtime's over.
But I want the real Annabelle. I want the Raggedy Ann doll. I don't want the movie one. That I'd like to see.
I agree. The actual one is creepier because it's something you would have in your home. No one would have like this obviously scary looking thing sitting there. No one would go by, like some weirdo would, but like no normal person would keep around this like dirty doll, this like evil vicious. Like no wonder that's evil. Look at it. But if it's just a straight up doll that's evil, that's scarier because everyone's got something around that's just normal looking.
And it's like a 4-foot doll. At least in like the Origins of Annabelle, it's huge. It's just like, all right, well, that's awkward.
Yeah, I raised my hand right when you said a weirdo would buy it. I'm like, oh.
Exactly. Kevin would be the weirdo that have it though. So
yeah,
he was raising his hand.
Yo.
Well, I mean, I'm surrounded by a bunch of bizarre stuff, and I don't mean the three of you.
I mean, I'm weird. I own it. I am a super weirdo. No shame here.
I'll own it. We're all weird. Yeah, I'm definitely weird.
Thank you so much for you coming on the show, Nasty Neal. I am so glad that you were able to make it. You are amazing and awesome.
Thank you.
And yeah, we really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you. I thank all three of you. It's been a great time, and I love all three of you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Aww.
I love you too.
Kevin's like your neighborhood pervert in a van.
When you whisper it like that, it's creepy. He's your peeping Tom. He's like, I love you. I love you so much.
Now you know he's the one lurking outside of your window. Neil likes gifts, so if you're going to be a creep, at least send him things.
Yeah. I stand by that.
Not dead things, though. Don't send him dead things. That's gross.
Yeah, but don't send me alive things either. I don't know if I want like...
You're going to get a puppy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kevin's going to ship you a puppy named Kevin, so you can love on it.
I don't know that they'd be alive by the time they got there. So, yeah.
The thought is very nice.
I used to work at UPS, and I was always worried that I was gonna grab a box one day and like it was just gonna start shaking. And
A gremlin.
don't get away, get away. Wait,
That's what she said. Wait, no, that's not what she said.
Either way, it's a very awkward way of phrasing it, I think.
It just sounds gross when he says it.
Kevin knows how to just change the tone.
right?
Read the room, Kevin. Read
Yeah.
the room. I like how Neil's scowling.
He's just like, can I leave now?
Is the Count from Sesame Street a horror icon?
Yes, yeah,
yes.
definitely.
He's a vampire. Run!
Is Snuffleupagus a monster?
Don't know. Snuffy?
They've got all these killer puppet movies. Why not Snuffleupagus the movie?
You did just go see a killer puppet movie.
I did. It needed Snuffleupagus.
What about the Puppet Masters? All the puppets.
Oh yeah,
They're
definitely.
Killers.
Chucky versus the Puppet Masters. That would work.
Yeah, now we're talking.
That would be cool.
How about Blade versus Count Chocula or versus the Count?
That would be funny. I think the Count would win. He's got all his minions.
I always like Puppet Master. Though. I always have a thing for the small monsters. I think because I always had a lot of action figures as a kid.
Yeah, I like the Puppet Masters. They made quite a few of those, didn't they?
Yeah, later on they're not so great, but like the
Yeah.
first
2 or 3.
3 or 4, whatever's good. Yeah, I think there's like 13 of them.
A lot.
Yeah, they kept it going for a while. So, yeah, Puppet Masters.
I just saw recently that there's like 39 or 29 or something Amityville movies. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, they're doing all kinds of weird stuff with them, but
I like the first one. I don't think I saw any of the ones after the first one. Not gonna lie. I probably did, though. Yeah, whatever was at Blockbuster I saw. So,
Yeah, I don't remember any of the ones I saw besides the first one being very good.
yes.
all right, my friends. Well, that was another awesome episode. Thank you so much for joining us, Nasty Neal. You are the best cauliflower kitten.
Aw, well, thank you,
Yes.
Zucchini Baby.
I don't know what just went on, Kevin, but hey.
It's that vegetable love.
You got it, dude. I don't have that, sorry. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning into 3Haunted Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And I'm Kevin K. Daddy.
Do you have any questions or comments or even episode suggestions? Email us at 300podcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to follow us on all of our social media. Hit that follow button. You don't want to miss one crazy moment.